All right, welcome back. In the previous video, we reviewed reasoning. In this one, we're going to look at conditional statements. So conditional statements are a statement with a hypothesis and a conclusion. They can be modified into a converse, inverse, contrapositive, and sometimes a biconditional statement. Remember, your keyword for converse is switch. Your keyword for inverse is not. Your keyword for contrapositive is both. Okay? Your biconditional statement can only be written if both the original and the converse are true. And it has my if and only if. Okay? So we're going to identify the hypothesis and conclusion, and then we're going to write and determine the validities of the inverse, the converse, the contrapositive, and if possible, the biconditional statement. Okay? All right, so when I look at this statement, the hypothesis is always after the word if. It does not include the word if. It's everything after the word if, but before the word then. So my hypothesis is angle 1 and angle 2 make up a bisected angle. Our conclusion is the part that comes after the word then. Again, it does not include the word then. Now, in the sentence, it's okay that it says they are congruent, but when I write my conclusion separately, I need to make sure that I write it without the word they, because we need to know what are we talking about. Well, we're talking about these two angles, right? So angle 1 and angle 2 is what we're talking about in both sentences. They are congruent. Angle 1 and angle 2 are congruent. Okay, so there is my hypothesis and my conclusion. Okay, when I look at, go to the next page, when I look at writing the converse, the inverse, the contrapositive, and the biconditional, I'm going to go ahead and highlight again since the other one was on the other page, and I want to make sure that I've got it here. All right, I'm going to remember that the keyword for converse is switch. So I'm still going to start with if, and then I'm going to use my second part. But remember, we can't start with they. When we wrote our conclusion, we said angle 1 and angle 2 are congruent. And you can abbreviate congruent if you remember the symbol. Okay? If angle 1 and angle 2 are congruent, then now I'm going to use the first part, and I can use then here, so I can replace angle 1 and angle 2 with they make up a bisected angle. Okay, it does say it wants me to determine the validity, so is this a true or a false statement? Okay, well, we do know our original statement, if angle 1 and angle 2 are a bisected angle, then they are congruent. Because if I look at a bisected angle, that means these two sides are both equal. So if angle 1 is here and angle 2 is here, those do have to be equal if this main angle has been bisected. So my original conditional is a true statement. Okay, but what about my converse? If angle 1 and angle 2 are congruent, then they make up a bisected angle. So any angles that are congruent have to be from a bisected angle. Is that true or is that false? Hopefully, if you think to a vertical angle, right, then we know that that means it doesn't have to be from a bisected angle. They could be vertical and they would still be congruent. So angle 1 and angle 2 could be congruent, but maybe not from a bisected angle. They could maybe be from vertical angles. So this is a false statement. Okay? My keyword for inverse is not. Okay, my keyword from inverse is not, so I'm going to keep it in the same order. So I'm still going to start with the blue. I'm going to say if. I'm still going to start with the blue, but I have to figure out how to make it negative. I have to change the tone of the sentence. So instead of if angle 1 and angle 2 make up a bisected angle, we're going to say they don't make up a bisected angle, right? So if angle 1 and, sorry, I'm going to abbreviate, angle 2 don't make up a bisected angle, then, so now I'm going to keep with my orange because we're not switching them, we're just putting a not. They are congruent. I need to put a not in there, so they are not congruent. I'm going to use my congruent symbol. Okay, so if angle 1 and angle 2 don't make up a bisected angle, they are not congruent. True or false, the validity here, if they don't make up a bisected angle, then they can't be congruent. Well, for the same reason this one is false, right? What if angle 1 and angle 2 were vertical? Well, that means they're not making up a bisected angle, but they are still congruent. So this one is also false. The vertical angle would be the counter example to both of those sentences. If I was asked to provide a counter example, I would say vertical angle, or I could draw a picture. My contrapositive, the key word here is both for contrapositive. Okay, so that means I'm going to switch it and I'm going to negate it. So I'm going to start with if, and then I'm going to switch. So I'm going to start over here with my orange, but remember we can't start with they. I still have to start with my angles, angle 1 and angle 2. Okay, if they are, now we want to negate it because we're going to switch it and we're going to negate it. So if they are not congruent, if angle 1 and angle 2 are not congruent, then now my first part, angle 1 and 2, or they, don't make up a bisected angle. All right, so let's look at the validity of this one. If they're not congruent, so they're two different angles, because the first part we always have to assume the first part is true. We're deciding, does that mean the second part is true or false? So if they're not congruent, can they make up a bisected angle? They can't, because in order to be in a bisected angle, they do have to be congruent. So if they're not congruent, then they don't make up a bisected angle. This is a true statement. Okay? Remember, your original and your contrapositive will always have the same truth value or the same validity. Your converse and your inverse will always have the same truth value or the same validity. So they can either all be true, they could all be false, although we rarely see that. Your outside ones could both be true and the inside one's false, or your outside ones could both be false and your inside ones could both be true. Again, that last one, we generally don't see that often because usually we're given a true original conditional. Okay? And then the last one here we're going to look at is my biconditional. Remember, your biconditional can be written if both the original and the converse are true. So my original is true, but my converse is false. So I have to say I cannot write one, cannot be written because the converse is false. Okay? Basically, in order to write a biconditional, you're going to see all of these be true. Okay? Hopefully that helps if you were forgetting your keywords for converse, inverse, contrapositive. And if you have any questions, make sure you stop by and ask in a tutoring or during Zoom. Thank you so much for watching.